Follow these tips that I will provide you to win the argument against your boss, a friend, family member, partner, or individual who crossed your path and wanted to disturb your inner peace and stoic resilience. You were insulted, but with these tips you will be in complete control of the situation. Even these people who try to attack you psychologically and verbally will regret doing so. These tips are powerful and psychologically threatening to people. Before continuing, you can subscribe to the channel and thus have more tips like this. Not bad. You cannot copy the charisma of the great geniuses of communication, but you can take advantage of their techniques and use them to your advantage. Steve Jobs, a genius who studied for years and understood the human psyche, is a very good example to show that we can always control situations with people who want to insult you, even when they catch you off guard. Listen to the following. The developer told him, "Mr. Jobs, you are a brilliant and influential man, but it is sad to see how you do not know what you are talking about. I would like, for example, to express in understandable terms how Java and any of its incarnations is reflected in the ideas incorporated in OpenDoc. And when he's done with that, maybe he can tell us what he's been doing for the last 7 years. The question calls him ignorant and insinuates that he has wasted time for the last 7 years. It can be considered a full-fledged insult, politely formulated, but a grievance. What did Steve Jobs do? He followed a series of steps that, combining Stoicism and psychology, serve wonderfully to control any situation. Step number 1, think before you act. After hearing the question, Jobs takes a sip of water. He lowers his head and thinks for 10 seconds. He even drops a sentence and think again for another 10 seconds. It is a silence that becomes uncomfortable in a room full of people, but he has no problem stopping to reflect calmly before answering. If you respond impulsively to an insult, you may say something you will later regret. It's better to stop and think about what you're going to say. The Stoics believe that the word is a powerful tool, which can be used for good or evil, and that is why we must be careful about what we say. In his work Enchiridion, Epictetus says, "Say nothing more than what is necessary, and what you say it briefly and bluntly." He also says, "Do not talk too much or about things that are too high. Do not talk about common things among ordinary people. Do not speak vehemently or with affectation." Epictetus teaches us that we should be prudent and moderate in speaking, avoiding unnecessary vain or false words. In this way, we will be able to better express our wisdom and our virtue. Step number 2, agree with the one who insults. After thinking about it, the first thing he does is agree with him. If someone insults you, agree with them. Maybe not entirely, but you can tell him that he's right about some things, or that it's an interesting point of view. In this way, you disarm the opponent, make him relax, and establish a point of connection with him. According to the Stoics, happiness is achieved by living in harmony with nature and the cosmic order, which is governed by a universal reason called logos. The Stoics consider that the only thing that is under our control is our attitude towards events, which are inevitable and have a rational explanation. Therefore, the wise man must accept fate with serenity and not allow himself to be disturbed by external things which are indifferent to virtue. For example, Epictetus says in his Enchiridion, "If someone tells you that you have said bad about him, do not try to defend yourself from what you have said. If he does not answer, he did not know my other faults, otherwise he would have said more." According to this thought, the wise man is not concerned with what others think or say about him, but with his own coherence and virtue. In addition, he recognizes his own mistakes and assumes them with humility. A true Stoic does not approve of agreeing with those who insult you, but rather maintaining an equanimous and rational attitude towards offenses. Step number 3. The tree doesn't let you see the forest. If the grievance has to do with a particular issue, or even if the attacker has strong arguments, he changes his partial view to a higher global view. In the case of Jobs, he does not directly answer the question asked by the developer, but he insinuates that he has said certain things or made certain decisions. It is because he has a global vision that is above all that. He says the hardest part is, how does this fit into a more cohesive, broader vision that will allow you to sell $8 or 10 billion a year? One of the things I've always known is that I have to start with the customer experience and from there develop the technology. You can't start with technology and try to figure out where you can sell it. No, Jobs is not taking away from his opponent's reason, but he is above it because he owes himself to a much broader and more important global vision than using this or that software. Another way to help the person broaden their perspective is to listen to their arguments with respect and empathy without judging or criticizing them. You can ask them what sources of information they use, what doubts or fears they have, and what benefits they hope to derive from their posture. Then, they can be offered truthful and contrasted information that refutes their erroneous beliefs and highlights the advantages of adopting a more responsible and supportive attitude. For step number 4, it's simple: we must be humble. The above answer implies that Jobs is above the simple developers, and that is why he puts himself on their level to win them over, saying, "I've made this mistake more than anyone else in the room." In this way, he also shows that he knows how to recognize mistakes. That increases empathy and credibility. The Stoics are humble people, and for us, this is a way of living in harmony with nature and reason, which are the manifestations of the logos or divine principle that governs the universe. Epictetus says, "Do not boast of anything or feel superior to anyone. Do not think yourself wiser or more virtuous than others. Do not compare yourself to anyone or take pride in your possessions or social standing. Do not despise anyone or make fun of their shortcomings. Don't get angry or lament about what you can't control. Don't worry about what others think or say. Do not be seduced by flattery or be offended by criticism. Do not be a slave to your desires or fear your adversities. Be a good citizen, a good friend, a good father, a good son, a good teacher, a good student, a good human being." Step number 5, win over the group. This step is for somewhat specific situations, but most of the time when a person insults you, it is because they also want to show off to other people. This is where your ingenuity comes in. In the context of Steve Jobs, the room was full of developers, but most of them are Apple workers, so there's nothing better than saying something like, "There are a lot of people working hard at Apple now, literally hundreds of people who are trying their best." Praising his audience, he puts them on his side. Marcus Aurelius says, "Do not be carried away by the impression of things, but examine them carefully and judge justly." This great sage of Stoicism in his writings recommends an attitude of humility, honesty, and self-control, as well as an interest in the common good and respect for others. These values can build trust and empathy in the audience, as well as motivate them to follow the speaker's lead. Step number 6, I'm human and I learn. Jobs ends magnificently by saying, mistakes will be made, some of them along the way, and that's good because it means that some decisions are being made, and we will find those errors and fix them. Something you should understand from all this is that Steve Jobs always acted in a serene way. He was never impulsive or responded to the first try. He always thought what he was going to say. He found in the comment the positive things he can learn from. He was humble and very intuitive in his answers. Jobs has responded to the insult without answering questions, but he has left his opponent without arguments, he has gained credibility, and he has won over the audience. The truth is, this was an attitude based on his Stoic knowledge, where resilience is key. In other cases, for moments where the situation could be more spicy, we also have more answers that will make you beat that person who attacks you psychologically and verbally. First tip, ask them if they're feeling better. When you make these kinds of comments, do you feel good? Some aggressive people seek to harm and devalue the other, but they know that this is wrong. Making them reflect on their expressions, those words can send the signal that even if you weren't angry about the comment, you didn't appreciate it either. The tone is as important as the content of the message. That is, you have to use a friendly tone when asking the question. Diogenes the Cynic said, "Insult dishonors the one who inflicts it, not the one who receives it. This phrase helps us to relativize the impact of the insult and not to take it personally, but as a sign of the lack of education or arguments of the one who says it. For the second tip, and something that helps to get any aggressor out of the box, is refer to a frivolity of language. For example, say, "I love your richness of vocabulary." This is a way of cutting to the chase and leaving him speechless. And the third tip is to ask the aggressor to rephrase his comment. For example, if you were asked a comment such as "Your work is ridiculous," you just have to stay calm, just like Steve Jobs did, and show a smile next to your maturity, which at the same time will indicate the lack of his own. You might say, "Please define what it means that my work is ridiculous." For the fourth tip, I tell you that an excellent way to show maturity in the face of childishness and lack of social and communication skills of those who try to offend you is to make them understand that you cannot always share the same opinions. The way to respond is as follows. "I imagine that your comment that I am an imbecile refers to the fact that you do not share my way of handling this issue." Now for the fifth tip, I recommend you analyze if it is worth arguing with that person. If you care, or maybe it was a moment of weakness and you prefer to maintain the integrity of the relationship. So in this case, the best thing would be to make him understand in a friendly and calm way how offended the verbal aggression made you feel, and apologize. Instead of reacting impulsively to an insult, we must learn to manage our emotions. When we feel offended or attacked, our emotional brain is activated and prevents us from thinking clearly. We are invaded by anger and stress, which do us more harm than the insult itself. To avoid falling into this trap, we must understand that the emotional brain is not rational. He jumps to conclusions without analyzing whether the criticism is well-founded. To respond to an insult intelligently, we need to prevent emotional hijacking. Instead of getting carried away by emotions, we need to use our logical thinking and focus on the facts. Emotional hijacking occurs when we interpret the insult as a threat to our ego. Then the amygdala is activated as if we were in danger and we lose control of our behavior. However, we need to be aware that the difference between an insult and constructive criticism can be very subtle and subjective. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb us, but the opinions we have of them." In addition, he added, "No one can harm you without your consent. You will be hurt the precise moment you allow yourself to be harmed." For more tips like this, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. That's all for today. So this is not a goodbye. It is a see you later.